Hello again. And for those who weren't with us at the beginning of the day, I'm Luke Evnan, Chairman of the Scleroderma Research Foundation. We have 3 more sessions, and I'm very pleased to be introducing this session on CONQUER, which is an acronym for the full name, the Collaborative National Quality and Efficacy Registry. Now, CONQUER is the only nationwide longitudinal patient registry, and it has been collecting data and biosamples across time and in centers all across the country. The building of a national longitudinal registry has long been a goal of the SRF, and after many years of preparatory work, we were tremendously excited to be able to launch the effort in 2018. Now, the SRF remains the key sponsor and the sole administrator of CONQUER. But that said, we're very pleased to note that the registry has matured into a broad community effort, currently encompassing 17 expert centers all across the country. And we're very excited about the progress to date, which you'll hear much more about. Also, I should mention that we are deeply appreciative of the support from Boehringer Ingelheim and Janssen, who have very generously contributed to the effort. Before we get into more detail, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. First, a reminder that we have a poll where you can learn about others in the session in the side panel, and we encourage you to participate. Second, this panel does have a Q&A. Please submit your questions, and we look forward to answering them. And finally, at the end of this session, as with the others, there will be a survey. Your feedback is very valuable in shaping what we offer going forward. Now, I'm pleased to introduce our 2 speakers. Tracy M. Frech serves as the Director of the Systemic Sclerosis Clinic at the University of Utah Hospital and the Director of Clinical Trials for the Division of Rheumatology. She is also an Associate Professor of Medicine in Rheumatology and Immunology at Vanderbilt University. Her research interests include vascular aspects of autoimmune disease, primarily vascular leak and scleroderma. Dr. Frech has published over 100 articles in peer-reviewed journals and several book chapters on systemic sclerosis. She provides mentorship to medical students with a focus on improving their early research experiences. Dr. Shervin Assassi is the Director of the Division of Rheumatology at the University of Texas in Houston. He's the co-director of the Scleroderma Program at the associated McGovern Medical School. Dr. Assassi has been repeatedly recognized as top doctors by Texas Monthly Magazine. Dr. Assassi is also an active researcher. His current research interests include the correlation of clinical features of systemic sclerosis with genetic and gene expression data with an eye to identifying novel therapeutic targets and to developing and validating clinically useful biomarkers. And with that, I'll hand this over to Dr. Frech.
Thank you so much, Luke. My pleasure to talk about CONQUER, which is a very large project aimed at improving care more efficiently, developing new therapies for systemic sclerosis, also known as scleroderma. The registry does not include localized scleroderma or morphia, but focuses on the systemic sclerosis or scleroderma patient population. The reason this is so important is the first project of its kind in the United States and brings together all the stakeholders that are dedicated to this mission. So the Scleroderma Research Foundation, scleroderma clinicians and patients, and pharmaceutical companies like BI are working together to create a national longitudinal registry for our systemic sclerosis patients. So what is a national longitudinal registry? This is really important because it's collecting clinical data from many systemic scleroderma patients from around the country in a single unified database that's aimed for research and discovery. This high quality clinical information is obtained at the time of just the routine doctor's visit. And we collect this over many years and enter it into a database for discovery work. This data will allow researchers and clinicians to learn as much as possible about all forms of systemic scleroderma in patients of all different backgrounds. And most importantly, because of the focus on early disease, how scleroderma progresses. So CONQUER is this nationwide registry that has the potential to become bigger and more powerful than any registry at any individual scleroderma. And that spirit of collaboration is particularly important. We include patients of all ethnicities that may not be represented in an individual center registry, allowing better discovery. A longitudinal registry allows researchers to follow patients over many years, which enables research about how scleroderma progresses. And many scleroderma centers participate, making it easier to do clinical trials. This is particularly important because every patient that's involved is important and it can lead to discovery work. So what will we achieve with this registry? We want to perform research to improve patient care. We want to learn about how scleroderma progresses so we can stop it. And we can learn about which types of patients will benefit from specific clinical trials so that we can have more effective therapies available for our patients. The CONQUER data will help drug companies design better trials that are more likely to identify effective therapies. How does CONQUER work? Well, as a CONQUER patient, you would come into your routine clinic visit. And if you're participating, you would be consented for the registry so that all that very important patient data that we're gathering at your patient visit is put into this database. We also would obtain a sample at that clinical visit. Now, the sample or biospecimen goes to Dr. Assassi at the University of Utah, Texas at Houston, and he's put in extremely important measures for top quality biomarker work. The clinical data is stored at the Data Coordinating Center at University of Utah, and this is a specific institute that does top-level data collection and has measures in place to keep that data very secure. And together, the research at the different universities and our partner drug companies can help understand how to better treat our patients in clinical trials. And this, of course, leads to better care and better treatments for systemic scleroderma. I now will turn the slide set over to Dr. Assassi, who will tell you a little bit more.
Thank you, Tracy. Similar to Tracy, I'm really excited to talk about CONQUER, which has been really a collaborative effort in recent years. And as you can see, CONQUER has gone from just being an idea to a large database that will lead to better care. And this slide is about CONQUER enrollment criteria. In order to be eligible for CONQUER, patients must be 18 years of age or older, have systemic scleroderma, as already mentioned by Tracy, and they have to be within 5 years of non-Raynaud's symptoms. So enrollment is really time sensitive. Why do we focus on early disease? Scleroderma tends to be more progressive early on, and we want to capture that phase of disease. If we enroll a large portion of patients who have long-standing disease, we will have skewed view of the disease progression and might actually reach wrong conclusions because we didn't capture the early phase. So it's really important to enroll patients who are in early stages of disease. How do we determine what is early stages of disease? So we look at when the first non-Raynaud symptoms started. So as you know, scleroderma can cause Raynaud's phenomenon, which is that changing of color in the fingers, often cold exposure. But scleroderma causes also other symptoms, such as puffy fingers, joint pain, carpal tunnel syndrome, acid reflux. What we choose as the starting point of disease is the first symptom, except Raynaud's phenomenon, that is attributable to scleroderma. And patients can participate in CONQUER even if they are enrolled in another registry. So enrollment in another registry or even a clinical trial doesn't preclude you from enrolling in CONQUER. And ultimately, CONQUER will benefit every scleroderma patient, even those who didn't fulfill the enrollment criteria. Next So how do you participate in CONQUER? If you meet the enrollment criteria, which was mentioned on the previous slide, and you are a patient at a participating center, ask your doctor about enrolling. Patients will participate through their routine clinical visits, and data are captured typically twice yearly. Clinical data are captured, and blood samples are collected. And patients also tell us how they feel and function by filling out patient-reported outcome surveys. These are forms that will be emailed to you, so you can fill them out at your own convenience. And typically, patients stay in the study and are followed longitudinally, but they have also the option to opt out from the study at any time. And opting out from the study does not affect their routine clinical care in any way. Patient will receive the most modern standard of care within CONQUER, and there are no experimental therapies involved in CONQUER. Next slide, please. So your privacy is extremely important to us, and there are several measures to protect your privacy. Your clinical data and data samples will be de-identified. That means there are no identifying information linked on the samples, for example. So no one can get personal information about you. CONQUER data is protected in a secure data center at the University of Utah. This data coordinating center specializes in the storage and analysis of large-scale clinical studies. This is really an experience center which has several measures, for example, to protect your data against hacking. It's not only managing the CONQUER database, it's managing literally tens of large-scale databases from other studies, and is very experienced in protecting and your privacy and ensuring that the data quality is top-notch. The CONQUER blood samples are collected at the sites according to a standardized protocol, shipped overnight to our laboratory at the University of Texas, Houston, and they are processed according to a very standardized protocol, and they're stored in -70 freezers in order to ensure that the molecular changes don't change with storage. And our database, our biorepository has long-standing experience with processing and storing biosamples from scleroderma patients, and is the largest biorepository of scleroderma samples in the world. Next. So what are the benefits of CONQUER Registry? CONQUER, as a large, high-quality observational cohort, which means the patients are receiving routine clinical care and we can understand the course of disease in the context of the routine clinical care, will accelerate advances in clinical care by helping us understand the different flavors of scleroderma and their course, support development of new therapies, because we are also collecting biospecimen, and these biospecimen are gonna help us to understand the molecular heterogeneity, which means the different flavors of scleroderma at the molecular level. And patients who are enrolled in CONQUER receive heightened scrutiny in a more formal setting in a specialized scleroderma center. And in the future, CONQUER will include a clinical trials platform for rapid testing of new drugs. And I would like to point out that this clinical trial platform will be separate from CONQUER. Patients who are in CONQUER would need to agree to enroll into that clinical trial platform and would need to provide a separate consent. Basically, CONQUER will always only provide routine clinical care, but it will provide the infrastructure for these future clinical trials, and enrolled patients may be eligible to participate in these clinical trials. Next slide, please. So as you can see on this map, CONQUER is truly a collaborative effort and captures a wide geographic area. And if you are seen in one of these centers, please talk to your treating rheumatologists so that they can enroll you in CONQUER if you fulfill the eligibility criteria. But if you are not seen in one of these centers, you can always email the SRF staff, and they will help you to connect with one of the centers that is geographically nearby you. Next slide, please. So these are the CONQUER institutions. I'm going to just quickly mention them because actually, so that you find the center that is nearby you. University of Michigan, Johns Hopkins, Mass General Hospital, Northwestern, Duke is coming on board, UT Houston, MUSC, Vanderbilt, Columbia University, New York City, Hospital for Special Surgery, New York City, University of Pennsylvania, University of Utah, Stanford, George Washington University, DC, Georgetown University, DC. And as you can see, the principal investigators in CONQUER are well known to the scleroderma community. These are clinicians and researchers who have importantly contributed to our understanding of scleroderma disease course. And more importantly, they are really experienced clinicians. They have literally seen thousands of scleroderma patients and are very well equipped to understand the different flavors of scleroderma and how these different flavors of scleroderma would need different types of treatments. Next slide, please. So how can you support scleroderma by supporting CONQUER? So the success of CONQUER really depends on having large number of patients participate. The more patients who enroll, the larger the amount of information researchers will have to pursue better care and new therapies. And every patient is unique and adds important information to this database. So by enrolling, you are really contributing to this collaborative effort that can ultimately lead to better treatments in scleroderma. So if you can enroll, or even if you cannot enroll, you can do something that is really important, and that is spreading the word about CONQUER. Please become a CONQUER ambassador to encourage others to enroll. Share information about CONQUER on your social media platforms, which can be very powerful to spread the word about our study. Contribute to CONQUER. Donations at any size make a difference. Next slide, please. So CONQUER, as mentioned by Tracy and Luke, is truly a collaborative effort. It takes a village to do this type of studies. And the Scleroderma Research Foundation is the founder of the CONQUER Registry and continues playing the lead role in the administration and financing of its activities. So the volunteers in Scleroderma Research Foundation and the staff have spent really hours to start this registry and now continue administering it. Obviously, the physicians involved in CONQUER are dedicating their time, but also their expertise that they have accumulated over the many years by doing their own studies to this collaborative effort. And it's really important also to mention that patients donate their time to this effort. And ultimately, this effort is also a partnership with the pharmaceutical companies who have entered into partnership with SRF and CONQUER and contribute financial support, but also expertise to the CONQUER registry. Boehringer Ingelheim is a founding partner of CONQUER Registry, has basically supported CONQUER from the beginning, as if it in a phase that it was just an idea. Similarly, Janssen is a partner, and we hope that in the near future this list will be expanded. So we welcome other companies to contribute to this partnership. So next slide, please. So if you're looking for more information about how to enroll in CONQUER or how to contribute to CONQUER, please use one of these resources. And this program will be recorded and will be posted on YouTube, so you can watch it again if you have questions. And more importantly, if you have any questions, you can always contact SRF staff. They will try to find the answer or make the connection to the right person who has the answer. Thank you very much. I will stop here, and then we will take your questions as a panel.
Well, thank you very much, Tracy and Shervin. That was a fantastic rendition and introduction to the CONQUER Registry. The two of you have been so active and such great enrollers and participants and really leaders of the consortium. I wonder if we could just spend another minute on how the consortium actually operates and give all of the patients who are on board here just a sense of what goes on. Perhaps we could talk just a little bit about the biorepository itself, where samples are collected, and talk a little bit about the data quality efforts, which are embodied in the data quality committee. Tracy and Shervin, go ahead, please.
So Tracy, I'm going to start with the biorepository, and then you can take it on with the data quality. In terms of biorepository, I think CONQUER is very unique in that regard, that we have a central biorepository. Despite having centers literally across US, all the centers are following a standardized protocol. Every sample in CONQUER is collected in the same way, shipped in the same way, and then processed and stored in the same way, because we don't want to have technical variations. We want really to discover the molecular abnormalities in systemic sclerosis. When we have too many technical variations, we encounter so much noise that we will lose the signal. And the more standardized the sample collection is, the higher likelihood that we will really discover the signal that underpins this really multifaceted disease. Also, what is really important is that observational cohorts, similar to CONQUER's, usually don't have such a standardized, rigorously worked out protocol for sample collection and storage. And then also, what is also important, the usage is also according to best scientific practice. Every proposal is reviewed by an independent science committee, and we will track every sample that is used. We will track thaw-free cycles, because as you thaw serum samples, some of the proteins get degraded. All that is tracked. And that happens typically in clinical trials, but not in observational cohorts. So I think what is so unique about CONQUER, that we are really implementing this in a multi-center observational cohort.
And I think that follows with the data quality question that you asked, Luke. And so I'd like to back up and say that this whole registry is the brainchild of patients and leaders, leading physicians in the field, and sponsors that made the work possible. So everyone came together and said, if we want to find a cure for scleroderma, if we want to do this right, how should that look? And the first part was identifying all the data variables all across all the scleroderma centers that we said, these are the key data elements that need to be collected and tied to the specimens that Shervin just described. Each data variable then goes into a database and is queried. And what that means is we make sure that data makes sense. And this is done on a regular basis. Each site that enters data is audited, meaning that they check with the medical records to ensure that the quality of each data point is accurate. And as the previous chair of the Data Quality Committee, I met weekly and reviewed every comment or concern made by individual sites. So it's an iterative process. If a site says, I don't really understand what you mean by this data collection point, it's discussed both on the data coordinating level as well as with all the investigators to make sure that we're all talking the same language. And each of those data points then, once they're entered and cleaned and ensured that they're accurate, are looked at by the investigators to try to find patterns so that discovery work can be done. And we can really figure out what is different in the scleroderma patients that are entered in the registry. And for patients on the call, I want to highlight that every answer that you put on those patient-reported outcomes is so valuable to us because it helps us understand how you're feeling in the context of those biospecimens. And so a thank you to the patients that put in their data because we couldn't do the work without you.
Thanks. Maybe just one question. We're seeing a number of questions about how the consortium is going to expand over time, both in the US and whether there might even be an opportunity for ex-US enrollment at some point. So Tracy, just want to talk a little bit about number of sites today and where we're going in the immediate future and perhaps in the more distant time frame?
Absolutely. So I believe we started with 12 or 13 sites, and then that has been expanded. We usually will try to bring on 2 to 3 sites a year and at least offer the invitation to a site. And in order for a site to become an active enroller, they have to be a Scleroderma Center of Excellence. So they are usually a member of the Scleroderma Clinical Trials Consortium. I'll highlight that physicians put the data point in. So these are physicians that are trained in the Modified Rodnan Skin Score and have the exam skill set to really understand the physical exam in scleroderma. So as we bring on sites, the idea is those sites need to be able to enroll at least 20 patients a year so that the consortium is growing. The idea of international sites has certainly been discussed by the group and is the ultimate goal for CONQUER, but currently we do not have international sites as a part of CONQUER. We'll likely offer 3 more invitations in this next coming year after our ACR national meeting that will occur in November.
Right, exactly. And so one of the things that I think it would be fun to review and is to talk a little bit about how consortium data gets shared among researchers in the consortium and potentially outside of that, and talk a little bit about actually what studies have already been launched, which I think is a bit of a success story for this consortium. So Shervin, maybe you can talk a little bit about that, and of course you'll mention some of the work, some of the awards that have already been garnered.
Sure. So in terms of work that has been already completed, the best way of disseminating or distributing information in medical field is publishing manuscripts that are reviewed by your peers for quality. So peer-reviewed manuscripts. And CONQUER has already multiple peer-reviewed manuscripts describing the cohort, describing the characteristics of cohort, but also, for example, the pattern by which doctors in scleroderma centers are ordering high-resolution chest CT to screen for lung disease, for example. And that can help us to identify gaps in our practice. In terms of other work, as I mentioned previously, what is so special about CONQUER is that we can link high-quality samples to high-quality data. And we have been successful in obtaining external funding from Department of Defense, which funds scleroderma research in a very competitive process, which actually speaks for the quality of work done in CONQUER, which is basically a teamwork between patients, SRF, obviously the PIs at the centers, and other physicians and research staff. And we have received funding to do a large-scale biomarker study, basically molecular markers, to predict the course of interstitial lung disease in systemic sclerosis. Also, CONQUER is collaborating with Boehringer Ingelheim to understand the molecular changes in serum protein, certain serum proteins that change with treatment, because it's important to understand what changes are occurring because of disease and what changes are occurring because of treatment. So those changes need to be teased out to understand really what is the molecular underpinning of scleroderma.
Tracy, do you want to talk a little bit about the role of the patient and sort of the future of this registry and where we hope to be over the next couple of years?
Absolutely. The thing I love the most about CONQUER is it is an absolutely patient-centered registry. And so our goal as investigators is to capture the voice of the patient, how they're feeling and functioning, and translate that into discovery. And so I already mentioned about the patient-reported outcomes. Those are the questionnaires that patients fill out. We really value and appreciate that information the patients are directly putting into the registry. Every patient is important. And in fact, in clinic today, I told 2 patients that enrolled today that what they will make a difference. That individual patient can make a difference, because if they are taking their medications and they're doing really well, we now have a way to molecularly capture that. And Shervin has done such a lovely job making sure that our samples are well preserved and we're able to translate how the patient's doing into discovery work. So I just want to tell every patient how much we appreciate them being a part of the consortium and providing their feedback on things that could be better. So we revise the database as needed to ensure that we're accurately capturing the patient experience. We hope to expand this and make it bigger and better. And so as the other sites come on, I think we'll see even more publications and grants coming out of this project. So I think patients just really need to know how much we appreciate their participation.
Fantastic. Yes. Well, thanks again to the 2 of you, Dr. Shervin Assassi and Dr. Tracy Frech. You guys have been fantastic consortium members and very generous with your time today and willingness to give us an update on CONQUER. So thank you very much and good day.
Thank you for having us.